the Let's Go Live button. So let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started, because boy, we've got a lot to get to today. Andy's asking, is Leaf Blower Guy out there? No, it's not Leaf Blower Guy. We're going to have a bunch of Super Bowl guys out here soon, very, very soon. It's getting rowdy. There's the Super Bowl convention is, no, the Super Bowl, what's it called? Experience. The Super Bowl experience is right down the street. Lots of people all over the place. And so we might hear, drunk Super Bowl guy outside very soon. It's going to be a lot of fun. But it looks like the stream is working. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about that balloon being blown up. Happened on Saturday. And so we're going to go through it. It's a lot of fun to watch a Chinese communist spy balloon be blown out of our sky into smithereens. We'll watch it once or twice. But then we're going to go and talk about the reaction that came out of our elected administration officials. We've got Ned Price. Remember him? We're going to hear from him. He's over at the State Department. The media from the international press was asking him all sorts of questions today. And it was actually interesting. I didn't sort of expect this theme to pop up. But they were asking him, was this kind of an overreaction? You know, should you guys have gotten rid of that thing? And he responds with about as much as you'd expect him to respond with. So we'll go through several different clips of him. The media asking him whether the media turned this into much ado about nothing. We're asking ourselves about the relationship between the White House, Biden, the United States, and China now and all their counterparts. So Ned Price is going to walk us through all of that. Then we've got Karine Jean-Pierre. The White House also got asked about this. So the State Department got asked. Karine Jean-Pierre. There was a very interesting little tidbit about the timeline that the White House allegedly followed. Remember, the big criticism from the Republicans is not that he finally shot it down out of the sky. It's that it took so long for him to get there, that it took, basically a week or so. And this thing entered up near the Alaska and Aleutian Islands and then made its way down through Canada up into the United States, moseyed around through a bunch of different sensitive areas, and then left. So they're asking, why did it take so long? And Karine is going to give us a little bit more detail on that timeline, because as we heard about last week with Joe Biden, he said that he had ordered this to be done on Wednesday. So why did it happen on Saturday, right? Where's the disconnect there? Is it really such a dangerous thing? It's going to actually injure people on the ground? Did they stop the ability of this thing to transmit data? Or was it just transmitting, beaming, whatever it could gobble up over to the Chinese? We don't know. We also had an interesting picture of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden that we'll talk about. So the press was asking Karine about this. How much damage has this done to the relationship between the United States and China? There's also this very interesting story that was percolating over the weekend where they were trying to sort of muffle some of the criticism from the Republicans. A lot of people were upset that Biden was so slow to act. And they said, well, your boy Trump, he didn't act when he had balloons too. And everybody went, what are you talking about? What balloons were there? That was just like not that long ago. What balloons? And they said, well, we found them after Trump left. And you said, wait a minute. You found balloons that crossed into the United States after Trump left? That's amazing. What else did you find? Well, we'll get there. There was a conversation about this question from the media. Are you also briefing Trump people? Are you communicating with them? Is this like an ongoing attack? Is this a long-ranged, long timeline type of operation that's going on here? What's happening? And our last question is about what happens the next time we get another murderous communist balloon flying across our airspace. What are they going to do? Are they going to just let it mosey around again? Like, are they tightening this up, or was this a great success? Was this like a job well done, everybody, mission accomplished? We don't know. So we'll go through that. Congress is very upset about this. We've got several clips from Congress. We've got Rand Paul. He said the Biden administration is just a total abject failure. But he said what's worse is actually China's response. It's been absolutely appalling. And we'll talk more about that today, obviously. We've also got Ted Cruz. He said the Biden administration waited too long, and Tom Cotton said that it was just a total failure, just failed, right? Biden was tested and he failed, and we have to act accordingly. Of course, Biden's prepping up for the State of the Union tomorrow. They're already locking down Congress. They don't want any more of those insurrectionists to come over there. But we're going to start at the top with all of the background, including watching it again and listening to China's response. And so, as you can see, we've got a lot to get to today, my friends. And if you want to be a part of the show, the best place to do that is by going over to watchingofthewatchers.locals.com. We have an awesome community chatting away over there. And we do member-only streams. Actually, it's free. You don't even have to pay, but just come on over there and you can watch member-only content, right? Exclusive content if you want to join our community. There's also a ton of other amazing people there to get to know, share your stories, drop your comments, engage. We are rebuilding the informational supply chains here. A community is a great way to do that. So come on over there and check it out. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Also, I want to shout out our sponsors here today. Brickhouse Nutrition, where you can get your field of greens, your real organic superfood. Don't forget to use code Robert when you go to fieldofgreens.com. Get your daily servings of vitamins, vegetables, fruits, all the good stuff, and it's actually delicious too, all right? I drink it, it's good. That's why I look like this Chia Pet some days when I have a lot of it, you know? Okay, just kidding. It doesn't actually do that. It's a great product. Doesn't turn your hair green, but it'll make you feel energetic and vibrant. We also want to shout out our law firm, the R&R Law Group. If you need help with a criminal charge in the state of Arizona, that's what we do at the R&R Law Group. We've got a whole team of people ready to help. 480-787-0394. We offer safety, clarity, and hope. And of course, we appreciate your referrals to our firm. All right, and so now let's get right into business because we've got a lot to get to today. Shot down that Chinese communist spy balloon that was meandering around over our heads for about a week or more is finally out of the sky, and I feel a little less communist already. And it's good news. We're going to go through and take a look at the actual shooting and evisceration of this spy balloon before we go over and see what the Chinese had to say about this, because they posted a very angry letter on their ministry website over there at chinese.gov.cn.communist.china. And so we'll take a look at that, as well as this news story that Trump apparently had some balloon issues, typo there, balloon issues when this was a problem back during his administration. Ratcliffe and Pompeo say not even true at all. So a lot to get to. Now, first, the big shot that we all are here for. Shot down. Now, this was a fun clip that I saw. You've probably seen it many times, but this is another one that I saw that was apparently coming from R&A, which I don't know where that is. You can see that in the bottom left there. The commie balloon is floating around right here in the center of your screen. This was the live reaction at Myrtle Beach when the balloon got blown out of the sky.
Checking Twitter on several different official... Oh. Well,
there it is. Poof.
I believe it just happened there.
There it is.
That was it. Live, raw, and unfiltered. It appears that China spy balloon
is no longer a China spy balloon. It's gone. And so the news anchors are just sitting there watching it. Breaking news. They're probably going to shoot it down. Over the weekend, if you remember, they were locking down all the airspace. And so in South Carolina and sort of different areas protruding out into the ocean was all no-fly zone so that they could take this thing out. Here it is one more time.
Checking Twitter on several different official... Oh. Well,
sorry, President Xi. Your little spy operation,
raw, and unfiltered. It appears that China spy balloon
is exploded. Good riddance. Now, a lot of people are wondering why that took so long. Here's another close-up angle of this for just a little bit more enjoyment. Ultra high res telephoto zoom, the Chinese communist balloon blown to smithereens. There it is. Get out of here, commies. Now, this came over from somebody on Instagram called @casualphotoholic. And so you can see really nice photograph there. And you can see the big, long sort of thing hanging off of it as it's floating around. Hard to see where exactly it hits. Looks like it might, I guess that is what they would call the payload, right? Last week we talked and heard from Patrick Ryder, and he said that it was carrying a payload, and it certainly looks like this operation here, right? Looks like that big protrusion that is sort of hanging out. And it looks like the missile, which I think we're going to hear is a Sidewinder missile, hits it right there, which is kind of a bummer, huh? Kind of would like to see what all that was, rather than hitting it there. Some people think maybe it would be nice to hit it up here and just let it fall to the thing, rather than exploding the whole thing. I don't know, right? Unfortunately, I don't fly fighter pilots. I know that stuff, but I would, it's just kind of, we'll see. See if they can retrieve anything. But I'm guessing that it blew up most of the payload is my point, right? Looks like as it's falling to the ground, that's pretty much eviscerated there, unfortunately. So all the hard drives, all the technology, all whatever's in there, it all got hit. And then the balloon comes falling down behind it. So, all right, well, we'll see what they're able to uncover, but we do know the Chinese are not very happy about it. New York Times was responding. We're going to go to the U.S. response, and Karine talks about it. Ned talks about it. Congress is upset about it. But what do the Chinese say? Well, the New York Times is responding. They say, China finds itself with limited options now after the U.S. shoots down its balloon. And we're going to go through the official statement from Beijing here in a minute. But some background from Chris Buckley. He says, after an American fighter jet shot down a Chinese communist balloon that had floated across the United States for the better part of a week, the reaction from Beijing, defensive, angered. That they flew a spy balloon into our country and then we blew it out of the sky. They're upset about that? Okay. But they're hedging its options. Illustrated the challenges facing China's leader as he tries to stabilize relations. Now, hours after the balloon was struck by a Sidewinder missile and crumpled into the waters off South Carolina, the Chinese Foreign Ministry declared strong discontent and protest and doubled down on its position that the balloon was a civilian research airship blown way off course. Washington, not Beijing, had broken the rules, said the Chinese ministry. Now, I went over there and actually took a screenshot and a translated version of their statement from the Chinese ministry. You see here we have our red pen. Let's make this a little bit thicker, a little bit more communistic-y for this PDF here. Oh, that's nice and thick there. They're going to like that one. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a statement on the U.S. claim that it shot down the Chinese unmanned airship. This is translated from Mandarin from the Chinese website called the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They issue a statement on the claim of U.S. shooting down the unmanned airship. They say China expresses strong dissatisfaction and protest. Wow. Against the U.S.'s use of force to attack a civilian unmanned airship. Chinese side has repeatedly informed the U.S. side after verification that the airship is for civilian use and entered the U.S. force majeure, right outside of our control, which was completely accidental, said the Chinese. China clearly requires the U.S. to handle it properly in a calm, professional, restrained manner. China says that a spokesman for the U.S. DoD also stated that the balloon will not pose a military and personnel threat to ground personnel. Under such circumstances, the U.S. insists on using force, obviously overreacting, seriously violating international practice, say the Chinese. Whoa. China, they write, will resolutely safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of relevant comp while reserving the right to make further necessary reactions. Wow. So the Chinese are kind of pissed, huh? So they send a spy balloon over. Our inept government allows it to float around for a week, just Hoover vacuuming up everything, sucking up all the data on nuclear silos. And then we finally take it out of the sky, and now the Chinese are pissed. So we talked about this morning on our members-only stream on watchingthewatchers.locals.com. But it sort of feels like this might be a whole new front opening up in World War III, which we've already talked a lot about. That one started last February when Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's the first front of World War III. And so this is a brand new one that is now percolating all over a spy balloon. And if you remember, in prior world wars, they don't end in a year. It's a 4 to 6 year operation. And so something like this is about what you'd expect in season 1 of a 4-season arc. So it's very interesting. China's upset about it, and they don't apologize. They don't say sorry for the confusion. Sorry, we spent all of your time and money and effort on this little balloon. We know it's not a civilian balloon. We know it's not a weather balloon. We know they can control it because we heard that from Patrick Ryder last week. And now they threaten everybody else. They sort of are basically you're going to resolutely safeguard your legitimate rights. What? And you're going to take further reaction? Okay, well, react all you want, I guess. But the New York Times says, well, their options are kind of limited. I mean, what are they going to do? Chinese officials had been preparing to host the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken. We're going to hear from the State Department in another segment. For talks this week in Beijing. Technology barrier bans in Taiwan, a lot of issues were going to be addressed. Beijing's reaction to the bipartisan furor in the United States over the balloon suggested that Chinese leaders were baffled that those planned talks had been upstaged by what they described as an innocent mistake, if you believe that for a minute. But China also suggested that it could also somehow retaliate against the American military's actions. What are they going to do? There's Blinken. The Chinese vice foreign minister, called Xi Feng, told an unnamed senior diplomat from the American embassy in Beijing that the United States had distorted the facts over the balloon, and now they've damaged efforts to stabilize relationships. Mr. Xi said that they urged the United States not to take steps that further harm our interests or escalate and expand tensions. The National Defense of China, the National Ministry, which speaks for the military of China, also called it an excessive reaction. They said, we solemnly protest the U.S. action, and we retain the right to use the necessary means to deal with similar circumstances, said China. Yeah, well, okay. So I guess if the U.S. is flying any balloons over there illegally, they can blow them out of the sky. All right. That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Calibrating China's reaction will be tricky. China's in a very tight geopolitical spot. Their internet is an echo chamber. Xi has his hands full with domestic strains. Economies all over the place. They had zero COVID policies, which was a disaster for them. He's beginning his third 5-year term, saying that it would be a big problem if they made a strategic move out of this. The more they huff and puff, the more it reduces their credibility. Now, we'll see if the tensions continue to escalate and what the White House has to say about it. But a lot of people in China were very happy about it. One site in China called Weibo said that their leaders should get tougher. Maybe, one commenter said, maybe they should even shoot down an American plane. They took down one of our balloons, go take out one of their pilots. And those conversations are bubbling up to the surface on their social media. So we'll see where that goes. Now let's go over and see what else is happening. So the ministry says they're upset about it. They reserve the right. The Chinese are limited in their capability to respond, but we'll see what they do. Now the White House is facing a little bit of a PR problem. And if you also noticed over the weekend, there were all these interesting stories that got released that Trump had seen tons of balloons and he just let them fly all over the place too. In other words, what Joe Biden did was just regular, ordinary par for the course. He was just following Trump's precedent, right? Let's go through the story because it came over from CNN and others, and we're going to see whether it's confirmed or not from Ratcliffe and Pompeo. But CNN published this, of course. Natasha Bertrand says that Chinese spy balloons under Trump were not discovered until after Biden took office. You're kidding me. Man. He found them too. So he not only did he find his own Chinese spy balloon problem, but he also found Trump's also, which is crazy. You know, don't you hate that? And I wonder if he found anything else problematic there also. Like, did he also find like a bunch of extra inflation lying around also? Did he also find a bunch of extra illegal immigration lying around, or like an extra war with Ukraine or something? Like it all happened with Trump too. It's like he did it too, you know. All that kind of crap from him all over the place. Okay, so he says that we just discovered new balloons that make his balloon catastrophe look better. All right. So here we have it from CNN. Now, the transiting, they say, we're going to check this. The transiting of the 3 suspected Chinese spy balloons over the continental U.S. during the Trump administration was only discovered after Joe Biden took office. Weird. Weird. Can they look back in time? Now, a senior administration official told CNN on Sunday. So put a pin in this because Karine gets asked about this later. The official did not say how or when those incidents were discovered. The official said that the intelligence community is prepared to offer briefings to key Trump administration officials about the Chinese surveillance program, which the Biden administration believes had been deployed in several countries across 5 continents over the last several years. After the Biden administration disclosed that this had been hovering over Montana, Pentagon said that, oh, balloons? Oh, no, Trump had tons of balloons. His middle name was Balloon. But others in the Trump administration, like Secretary Mark Esper, said, no, not so fast. I'm a little bit surprised by that. Said, I don't ever recall somebody coming into my office or reading anything that the Chinese had a surveillance balloon across our United States. Never happened. Trump said the same thing on True Social. Said that's all fake disinfo. John Bolton, the former national security advisor under Trump, also pushed back on the assertion that balloons surveilled the U.S. Did the Biden administration invent a time machine, says John Bolton? Which is exactly right. What is the basis of this new detection? Very convenient. What else did they detect? You're kidding me. But added that he would take a briefing from the current administration to see what they offer for us. Bolton said the very fact, if it is a fact, that the Chinese tried this before, should have alerted us and caused us to take action before it came moseying around Montana and all of middle America. The Biden administration official now says the incidents were not discovered until after Trump had already left, but didn't say how they discovered it or where. So it's just a total mess over there. Another Chinese balloon has also transited the continental U.S. briefly at the beginning of the Biden administration. So this is not the first sighting. It's only the first sighting that has come this far in. Briefly at the beginning of the Biden administration. So they're just testing, right? They're just probing. This is like any real-time strategy game, any board game you've ever played. You just poke your opponent. You just needle them a little bit. How are they going to react to this? And then, so they fly one, nearby, and then they fly one all the way down. Gosh, so dumb. The senior administration official said that with regard to the balloon shot down on Saturday, the analysis into its capabilities are ongoing. Republicans have criticized. We're obviously going to talk a lot about that as the story goes on. But the main headline was, well, Trump did it too. If you're mad at Joe Biden, don't forget that Trump had his balloons too. And so take it up with him. Now, Ratcliffe, you know him, the former director of national intelligence. The DNI is the agency that essentially connects all of the intelligence agencies. John Ratcliffe is here, and he's asked about this so-called alleged balloon hovering issue during the Trump eras. Did you, Ratcliffe, see any balloons when Trumpo was in charge?
That there were 3 balloons, Chinese spies during that they were not. Can you tell us?
Well, it's not true. I can refute it. Former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper refuted it yesterday. Former Secretary of State and CIA Director Mike Pompeo has refuted it. But Maria, the American people can refute it for themselves. Do you remember during the Trump administration when photographers on the ground and commercial airline pilots were talking about spy balloon over the United States that people could look up and see even with the naked eye, and that a media that hated Donald Trump wasn't reporting? I don't remember that either because it didn't happen. As I said to you earlier, this was unprecedented. We have never had a circumstance where an adversary has had spy craft over our country, our continental United States, posing a threat for the better part of a week straight. And that's why I said to you before, not only is it unprecedented, but the damage from this is incalculable, both from an intelligence standpoint and the possible payloads. You talked a little bit earlier about the different types of payloads that a stratospheric balloon could carry. Those possibilities are limited only by your imagination. But what we do know is none of those are possible to be deployed against the United States if a stratospheric balloon isn't allowed to traipse across our countryside for 4 straight days, something that has never happened before.
4 straight days. Yeah, across middle America, but like it crossed in Alaska way earlier than that. It was up there in the Aleutian Islands before, in January even. So he says that, this is a bad situation. It could have anything, drop anything, gobble up anything. One of the main defenses is you keep it out. Now, there was another interesting angle to this that we talked about last week. One thesis for why the U.S. military may have allowed this thing to just meander on out was because they were intercepting the data, or they were preventing the data from leaving. They were monitoring the communication channels. This clip is Mike Pompeo. Of course, he's former CIA director, all sorts. This guy was former Secretary of State. He is, feted out the wazoo. And they brought him on. Now, this is a clip from before the balloon was shot down, so it's going to be a little bit out of context. But he does say that he hopes that what he hears is true, that maybe they were able to stop the transmission from occurring, which was kind of interesting that somebody so plugged in, somebody who is ex-CIA director, would know that and then reveal that on the news.
We bring in former CIA director and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He is a Fox News contributor and author of his new book, Never Give an Inch, Fighting for the America I Love. And that is a title that I think is quite relevant. I think it's to hear that Chinese sound.
Yeah, Martha, I agree with you. It should be surprising to most Americans. We ought to bring this darn thing down. We have the capabilities and tools to do that. I'm confident that we could have done so safely. I think we probably still can do so safely, and we ought to do that. I'm happy to hear. I hope it's true that we've stopped it from transmitting data that it was collecting. And the Chinese say this was just a weather surveillance device.
So hopefully they've stopped it from transmitting data that it was collecting, right? He hopes that's true, and that might be part of the reason why they were allowing it to mosey on all over the place, but who knows?
That's just fundamentally inconsistent with what the Chinese are doing all across America today. And Martha, as much as the intelligence, the fact that they've now penetrated our airspace, put a very visible symbol of their country over our airspace, and we have done nothing. This is a green light for bad guys all around the world, including Xi Jinping. There is the military significance, but also the political significance attached to the fact that Xi Jinping is clearly probing to see if the Biden administration is serious about never giving an inch about protecting our country. And to date, it doesn't appear to me that he's prepared to push back against them in any serious way.
Yeah, not at all. In fact, it sounds like they're just going to kind of try to let the whole thing slide. We're going to hear from the White House in a minute. But of course, there is going to be more reaction from China. When that comes in, we will see what they say. We also have the White House and the State Department. So we're going to go to Karine Jean-Pierre right after we check in with Ned Price from the State Department. The U.S. Secretary of State has a spokesman. His name is Ned Price, this fellow right here. And he got a lot of questions about the balloon from China. The media wants to know if the U.S. overreacted because the Chinese are pretty upset about this. They've said that they are reserving the right to react, and there may be a whole lot more coming from them. We'll have to wait and see. But the media has questions for Ned. If you don't remember Ned, we do check in with him from time to time. He is the State Department spokesperson. He went to Harvard, all right? So we're all going to have to, put on our Harvard caps or whatever. And he's also ex-CIA. All right. So that's perfect role for this guy to be explaining and interfacing with the rest of the world for us. Let's see what he has to say about all of this. The media asks our friend Ned, sir, the Chinese said that you in America overreacted to them violating your airspace. What do you say about that?
Their reaction to critics saying that the United States overreacted due to domestic political pressure, since this incident happened, a similar incident happened before, and given the fact Secretary Blinken is going to be the first secretary to visit China in 4 years, and maybe potentially meet President Xi Jinping.
We had an opportunity. We had what would have been a valuable opportunity to engage in that face-to-face diplomacy. It was.
So the question was hard to hear because she still has her mask on. But the question was about what happened with the trip. Okay, Blinken was going to go over there. It was going to be this big first historic trip. No, secretaries of state don't go over there often, so it's kind of a big deal. They were going to piggyback off of a prior meeting between Biden and Xi at some other event that they were just at, where Joe Biden was being carted from room to room. So now that this balloon, it's just a balloon, man. It's just a balloon. You're going to let this derail these two great powers from coordinating together?
Opportunity. We had what would have been a valuable opportunity to engage in that face-to-face diplomacy. It was to have been a near-term diplomacy. Of course, the blame does not fall to us for undermining that opportunity. It falls to the PRC for engaging in what was ultimately an inappropriate, irresponsible, or unacceptable act.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we're not to blame here, right? He said the blame goes to China, which is obvious. It's nice to hear the government say it.
We've acted responsibly. We've acted practically. We've acted prudently in this case, but also in the broader context of the bilateral relationship. We think it's important that we have these lines of communication so that we can make very clear to the PRC what we're doing and why we're doing it. Unfortunately, they decided to undertake this action in the days leading up to Secretary Blinken's travel. That completely undermined the point of the trip and left us with, unfortunately, no option but to postpone it.
A good answer there from Ned. Nicely done there. I wonder what class they taught that at Harvard. But it's a very good answer. Finally, he's saying, hey, they screwed it up, not us. And you have to imagine they did it exactly timed with this, right? I mean, like the timing is not a coincidence. They said, all right, how long is it going to take for our balloon to leave mainland China, fly up over the poles through Alaska and back down through Canada to the United States? About 10 days? Perfect. When's Blinken coming over here? All right, why don't you schedule it to release that day? And boom, they were almost, exact, right? So Ned tells the media, and you can see he's sort of frustrated as he is, he's sort of, probably very frustrated because they work hard to schedule these meetings and they were going, this is their job as the State Department is to go have these meetings. They're all on a plane. Ned already packed his bag, right? He's probably a checked baggage guy, maybe 2 bags. I don't know. But he's loading them up. And then Blinken's like, God, Ned, you're never going to believe it. We got to cancel this trip. What? You're kidding me. Yeah, the balloon thing. It's just too hot right now. Milley said they're going to shoot it down on Saturday after it gobbles up everything. So Ned's like, oh, gosh, I got to unpack everything? Ugh. So they're frustrated. They don't want to have to do all this over again. And the media wants to know why they allowed this thing to spiral out of control. So the next clip is also from Ned, and the media asks him again. This theme kept percolating throughout this briefing. The media wonders, maybe the media just turned this into a big circus. Maybe it really isn't that important, and this is much ado about nothing. Would you agree with that, Ned?
One, just on what my colleague just used the term overreacted with regard to China.
Overreaction. To China flying a spy balloon into your nation. Just a simple overreaction for shooting it down.
How much truth do you think it is in if you say that the U.S. overreacted with just President Biden being pressured from like the U.S. media a little too much and
good for Ned. Look at his facial reactions.
Into the surveillance equipment terminology there, and that it was just some media people who didn't want President Biden and China to get a little bit closer. They were not interested in Blinken's visit, and is there any truth to that, you think, or no? There
Ridiculous
was some surveillance
question.
equipment found in the balloons as well.
So a couple things.
So the question was, aren't you guys just kind of overreacting over this? The media was pressuring Joe Biden. They were kind of, elevating this because they didn't want Blinken to go over there and have this meeting with China. It's a bunch of anti-Chinese, anti-U.S. normalized relations people who were inserting themselves into this debate. And Ned was scoffing the whole time.
Things there first. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of the United States to suggest that we take these sort of actions based on anything other than what's in our national interest. This was a decision that the president made in close consultation with the Secretary of State, with the National Security Advisor, with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, with the Secretary of Defense as well. And ultimately, the course of action was one that was put forward and executed by the Department of Defense. When it comes to what we've heard from the PRC, I'm just not going to give that too much oxygen. Let me see if I can state it as clearly as I can. The PRC knows precisely what this was. The PRC knows precisely why this was in our airspace. The PRC knows precisely what this was doing over the United States. And ultimately, the PRC knows precisely why we did what we did.
Nice.
The Secretary made the point on Friday that if the shoe were on the other foot, if something analogous were to have happened within PRC airspace, you can only imagine the response from Beijing.
Totally.
They
blow it out of the sky and invade
clear,
Taiwan.
We have been resolute, but we've also been practical as well. And we have taken practical steps since the time this high-altitude surveillance balloon was detected to mitigate its ability to collect intelligence against sensitive sites, to mitigate.
Now that's another debate that we'll come back to.
Any threat it could pose to the American people. But more than that, in a way, we flipped the script because we've trained quite a bit of capabilities of our own at this high-altitude surveillance balloon while it was violating our airspace. We learned quite a bit about it and the practice in general, the technology.
Oh no! Okay, I liked it. I was very happy with this until we got to this.
That was on board, and as you've heard, I think just recently from my colleagues.
Actually, we're really happy they sent over this spy balloon. By the way, we learned a ton about it. We had 100 people working on this day and night, studying this thing. So how about that, China? We got the upper hand. Why don't you send us some more spy balloons?
At the Department of Defense, there is an active effort underway to recover what is left of this high-altitude surveillance balloon on the surface of the ocean.
Yeah, that you guys hit in the payload with your Sidewinder missile that exploded the whole deliverable of the entire balloon. Over water, perfect. So outstanding job.
And in the coming days, there will be an effort to collect what we can from the bottom of the ocean.
From the bottom of the ocean. That's great. They nuked the whole thing. So we'll probably never know what's on there, which is probably exactly what they want. They don't want anybody to know what's actually on that thing. And, it's just hilarious. All right. So I didn't know that was something they taught at Harvard, which is when you get spied on and totally embarrassed by a foreign adversary, one public relations strategy is to just say, I like to be embarrassed, actually. Why don't you embarrass me harder? Yeah, spy on me harder, baby. Yeah, send more over, some more balloons. Wow, that's really great. So there you go. Ed is delivering you a very expensive education from our friends at Harvard. All right. So here is another clip from Ned, and they're asking now about whether they notified China that they took out their spy balloon. Of course, because China had the spy balloon, which was beaming, presumably everything that it could see back over to Beijing. So when the missile was coming towards the balloon, they could probably see that the balloon got exploded because they weren't getting an active video feed anymore from the missile silos, right? So in this case, the media wants to know is, after you guys exploded that weather spy balloon, did you call China and tell them that you did that?
Conversations since the Secretary spoke with Wang Yi on Friday have not revolved around or touched on a rescheduling of the trip. What have they touched on? I mean, I'm presuming that on Saturday, if there were conversations, that they would have been about the shoot down of the balloon. Is that correct? Or
so it is true that we notified. It is true that we notified the PRC after the fact of the action that the U.S.
They saw it on TV.
After they saw it on TV,
they were watching, as were many of us. That was
they were watching the TV. You're not going to call them and tell them, "Hey, we're going to take out your spy satellite now. You ready for it?"
To them on Saturday. But in a sense, it shouldn't have come to as a surprise to our PRC interlocutors. As you know,
well, what else other than the balloon being shot down? What else did these conversations go over?
I'm not going to get into the conversations in any detail, but precisely what we said publicly is what we've conveyed privately as well. This was inappropriate. It was irresponsible.
Right,
it was unacceptable.
Right, but that's the same thing you were saying on Friday, and the same thing the Secretary said publicly, same thing that you said publicly, same thing the White House has said publicly. So, the Chinese already know that. So
they don't care.
what were the point? What were the point or points of the conversations that have happened since the secretary spoke to Wang Yi?
Well, part of the point, Matt, was repetition, and repetition can be important, especially when you're dealing with various interlocutors at various levels through various parts of a different government. We wanted the PRC to be under no illusions about the way in which we're treating this, the way we see this, and the implications that it has had not only on the Secretary's travel, but more broadly as well. Again, it was inappropriate. It was irresponsible.
He had to unpack all of his
It was
suitcases.
unacceptable for this sort of thing to happen. We wanted to be very clear with them about that. We did notify the PRC after the fact that this action had taken place on Saturday, that the rest of the world
we blew up your
saw
spy
as
satellite.
well. But again, it should not have come as a complete surprise
took
to
it
the
out.
PRC. When Secretary Blinken spoke with Wang Yi on Friday morning, he underscored twice for Wang Yi that the United States would be prepared to take any appropriate action to protect our interests. A similar message was conveyed to the PRC embassy official that Secretary Blinken and Deputy Secretary Sherman met with here on Wednesday when that individual was summoned to the department to discuss this.
Wow.
We are, even as we convey.
Wow. Okay. Somebody was summoned to the White House to discuss that on Wednesday. Did you hear that? All right. We're trying to assess the timeline here. When did Joe Biden order the balloon to be shot, right? This administration has a big problem with timelines. They say they did a bunch of stuff. They say searches are complete. Searches are not complete. They say you got all the classified documents. Guess what? You didn't have all the classified documents. So this story goes on and on about who did what and when. And we all want to know what it looks like and have the chronology detailed for us so we can see it with a fine-tooth comb. In this case, we have questions about when Joe Biden ordered the specific shoot down. He's going to tell us that it happened on Wednesday. But as we just heard from our friend Ned, who went to Harvard, who can't be wrong, he is confirming that they brought Chinese officials to the White House on Wednesday. So the Chinese officials knew at that time that they were prepared to shoot it down. And what it sounds like to me happened is Joe Biden gave the order and he got overruled by everybody else who was there on Wednesday. Let's listen to this.
The embassy official that Secretary Blinken and Deputy Secretary Sherman met with here on Wednesday.
On
when
Wednesday.
That individual was summoned to the department to discuss this.
Okay, so yeah, amazing. So this comes across like Monday, right, into Montana, or whenever it crossed. By Wednesday, no, into the Aleutian Islands, I think was on Monday. You follow the timeline regardless. Joe Biden gives the order on Wednesday. They're still meeting with a bunch of their counterparts on Wednesday. They decide not to shoot it down on Wednesday. And it floats around until Saturday.
We are, even as we convey these tough messages in a candid way, we are going to continue to maintain in contact with the PRC. Okay. We believe in the importance of these channels of dialogue, precisely so that we can see to
Last one, but if it's just repetition all the time, are you not at all concerned that the Chinese are going to start to think like you guys think when they repeat their whole Taiwan line at every single meeting they have with you, that it doesn't really do any good just to repeat the same? This is inappropriate, it's inexcusable, it's a violation of international law. Do you not think that it's going to have the same non-impact that their repetition of their talking points on Taiwan have with you?
Matt, we are now, 48 hours from Saturday afternoon. We're 72 hours from Friday. We are talking about this over the course of a few days now. I think to compare this and to try and analogize in that way, it's not only asymmetric, but it's just not an apt analogy.
All right, so that's Ned, and they're still communicating with China. But China now knows that if they fly a spy balloon in, not only is it going to take several days for them to decide what to do, as happened in this case. It came across Alaska on, let's say, a Monday, crossed into the United States, Montana on a Wednesday. It's finally taken out on a Saturday, right? Is able to traverse the entire continental United States in the meantime. The United States paused and waited to summons somebody from the Chinese, their counterparts, into the White House to sit down with them and have a meeting with them. Biden gave the order on a Wednesday, shoot it down. something happened on Wednesday. It didn't get shot down. So my guess is the meeting happened and Biden lost the debate. Everybody else there decided, no, we're just going to keep this thing going. And then they decided to shoot it down on Saturday, which is just amazing. And so the Chinese now know that, hey, at least they'll get a meeting out of the White House before their balloon gets obliterated. So we'll go through that again. Of course, that's Ned from the State Department. We're sure there's going to be a bunch more from Blinken as we continue to see what China does in response. We'll continue to cover. We also have the White House and Karine Jean-Pierre. Karine Jean-Pierre fields questions from the press on the balloon. Lot to put together here, including a timeline. Recall that Joe Biden said that he ordered this thing to be shot down on Wednesday. This was the president speaking after he got off of Air Force One. The balloon had come down. U.S. fighter jet shoots down Chinese spy balloon, is the Chiron from CNN. And the president had something to say as he deboarded.
Briefed on the balloon. I ordered the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible. They decided, without doing damage to anyone on the ground, they decided that the best time to do that was as it got over water outside within the 12-mile limit. They successfully took it down, and I want to compliment our aviators who did it, and we'll have more to report on this a little later. Thank you.
Mr. President, what did you say about China? What's the message to China? You were saying the recommendation was from your national security.
I told them to shoot it down.
On Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
But the recommendation.
They said to me, let's wait till the safest place to do it.
What does this mean for China, relations with China?
Yeah, because the Chinese were there meeting with them and they said, well, we better just let it ride. Now, something else was interesting on that trip. If you notice, this was a screenshot. Apparently, Biden was getting off the plane and he was hanging out with this fella right here, having conversations with old Hunty Poo. Hunter Biden, the smartest man that Joe Biden knows, is literally traveling around on Air Force One with the president. Current president doesn't really know where he is or really what he's doing, but his son sure does, and his son is there. And his son, conveniently, has a ton of experience with China. He had all sorts of business deals over there. When he flew over there on the vice president's plane and met with all the Chinese. So it's very convenient. They have a lot of capabilities now together. Great duo for America. That's probably who's really running things out there. So the media comes out. Karine Jean-Pierre is asked about a lot of this. And as usual, she provides answers as only Karine can. Asked about the Chinese balloon, we want to know what the timeline looks like. Here's a question from the media. Karine responds. This is when she gives her pre-recorded talking points, and then she explains what the timeline looks like, and let's see if we can follow it along.
The administration officials said that after the balloon was shot down, there were communications between the administration and their Chinese counterparts, and kind of detailing maybe rationale on the why. Can you talk about how you guys are thinking through the next steps in this relationship, given the cancellation of Secretary Blinken's visit, and obviously what seemed to be a pretty brazen act over the course of the last week?
So look, our approach with China has been pretty clear, and we've been very clear about this, and it will continue to be calm, resolute, and practical. That is not going to change on how we're going to move forward with our relationship with China, with our diplomatic conversations as we move beyond this. The president has been clear. We have been and will continue to keep open lines of communications with China. As you mentioned, Blinken and Jake Sullivan and many others have continued those dialogues, especially after last week. In fact, like I was mentioned, there was multiple levels of conversation about their surveillance balloon, and again communicated directly with China after we took our action to bring the balloon down. So again, multiple channels of communication that will continue. China's, we believe, irresponsible action were visible for the American and the world to see. Not only that, at the same time, a second PRC surveillance balloon was seen traversing in Latin America.
Yeah, they want to come from the north and the south. Two fronts. That's how you do it in the games.
That's one thing that you all reported. And it's up to China to show it is serious about its words of being a responsible country, that it wants to build build on the meeting that the president had with President Xi very recently. And so it's up to China to figure out what kind of relationship that they want. And as you know, yes, Secretary Blinken did postpone his trip. It was not canceled. And when the time permits, we'll see that trip back on the books. But again, it doesn't change our what we are trying to do and how we're trying to move with China. It's up to them.
And then, just one more. On Saturday when the president spoke just off of Air Force One, he seemed very definitive and
it's hard to actually figure out what that means. It's up to China. Okay, the Chinese have said that they're kind of upset about this. I guess they're reserving judgment. That was the statement that we read through in the prior segment. They said, well, we have the right to respond and we're going to reserve that right. And we're very upset about this. And this was just a normal civilian airship. And you could have just sent it back to us, you know? And then we didn't do that. So we'll see, I guess, if they're going to escalate and our official position is we're going to wait and see. It's up to China. China's like, well, I guess we're thinking about it. So are we just in a holding pattern now?
making clear that he was the one who said explicitly, I want this to be shot down. Military leaders suggested wait.
So this is a question about the timeline. Karine's going to walk us through the timeline in detail. Let's listen.
Spoke just off of Air Force One. He seemed very definitive in making clear that he was the one who said explicitly, I want this to be shot down. Military leaders suggested wait. Was that a reflection of perhaps some frustration in terms of the political attacks you guys have gotten from Republicans who said this should have happened on the front end as opposed to the back end?
Well, just a couple of things. I know there was a TikTok that went out to all of you from the National Security Council that was pretty detailed on how...
A TikTok? Did she say a TikTok?
Well, just a couple of things. I know there was a TikTok that went out to all of you from the National Security Council that was pretty detailed on how everything kind of broke down for the past week and how things flowed. I'll give a little truncated version of that. On Tuesday, the president, through the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, directed the military to refine and present options to shoot the balloon down immediately. The president also directed the...
Did she say TikTok, or is that something else? Is that something else that I missed? Is that another, did she intend to say something else? Is that another name for a intelligence memo? A TikTok? Here's what I'm trying to ascertain. Are they sending out national intelligence briefings about Chinese communist spy balloons on the Chinese communist spy app? What?
I know there was a TikTok that went out to all of you from the National Security Council that was...
National Security Council, pretty detailed TikToks going out with all the TikToks. What?
Republicans who said this should have happened on the front end as opposed to the back end?
Well, just a couple of things. I know there was a TikTok that went out to all of you from the National Security Council that was pretty detailed on how everything kind of broke down for the past week and how things flowed. I'll give a little truncated version of that. On Tuesday, the president, through the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, directed the military to refine and present options to shoot the balloon down immediately. The president also directed the military, the intelligence community to collect against the balloon so that we would learn more about China's capabilities and tradecraft. At the same time, we protected against Chinese intelligence collection because we knew exactly where the balloon was going. The military recommended taking the balloon down over water, following the determination by military commanders that there was undue risk of debris causing harm to civilians while the balloon was over land in Alaska, Canada, or the continental United States. On Wednesday, the president directed the military to take it down at the first available opportunity when it could be done with safety, especially as we're thinking about Americans' lives and being safe there, while maximizing our ability to recover the payload. Shooting the balloon down over water wasn't just the safest option. It maximized the chance of recovering the payload, giving us a better chance to get information from the Chinese surveillance balloon.
All right, this is horrible. Can she just give us the TikTok? Does anybody have the link to the TikTok that we can just watch rather than this explanation? I'm sure it was much better.
payload. But I think the bottom line here, and this is something that we want to make very clear, is that, look, what China did was unacceptable. We protected civilians, and we gained more intel while protecting our own sensitive information. And so I laid that out so you have an understanding of how this past week went. And, you know, the president, as we all know, is not just the president, he's also the commander in chief. And his number one priority is making sure that American lives are protected and that we protect, citizens in this country. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we were able to collect some data, which we were able to do. And that's why we took that
That's
action.
such a lame excuse. Oh, gosh. So the same thing that Ned said. No, by the way, when they were spying on us, we were spying on them even harder, by the way. America, you're welcome. We got all sorts of data. They could have gotten that anyways, right? I mean, you could have taken it out in Alaska, for example, and you could have gotten the whole thing. You could have done something differently and landed the thing, right? Or done one of the cool things that I told you to call Tom Cruise. And Harrison Ford did that thing where he was ziplining across the airplanes in the one movie. So, look, they could have done something else other than let it meander around for a whole week. And to turn around and make this whole thing twist on they're happy they got data out of it is a very, very poor excuse and justification for their actions here. So we're going to continue on with Karine because there are additional questions that came in from the media, including, hey, Karine, how much have you guys damaged your relationship with China now? And this woman wants to know how there could be other possibilities of other balloons from the Trump administration that he didn't know about and that we're just finding out about now. She's kind of shocked. This is kind of a weird thing for you to tell us about these new balloons. But first, let's talk about being healthy, because when the Chinese invade, we all want to make sure we're strong, healthy, and well. And so let's talk about our friends over from Field of Greens at Brick House Nutrition, because of course, we'd all like to drop some of those leftover holiday and pandemic pounds, but how sick are you of these weight loss pills and fad diets and all the books and all that stuff? Been there, done that. They don't work. You know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, and the weight would probably just fall right off. But vegetables, not a fan. Who has the time to prepare for all of this fruits and veggies every day? Let's talk about Field of Greens instead. Field of Greens is a science-backed formula of specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you burn calories, lose weight a healthier way, and faster. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. You're going to look healthier, feel healthier, but the great proof is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor says, wow, you've lost weight, you look amazing. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. It starts with Field of Greens. Let's get you started today. 15% off your first order. All you got to do, visit fieldofgreens.com, use code Robert, and save 15% off your first order. It is a real organic superfood. It's delicious. It tastes great going down, and it makes you feel healthy and vibrant. And you can get it over at fieldofgreens.com with code Robert. And now we turn our attention back over to Karine Jean-Pierre. The media wants to know, all right, Karine, now that you allowed this balloon to mosey around through our country and then decided to take it out of the sky, what has this done to the relationship between the United States and China?
How much damage would you say has been done to the U.S. China relationship because of this? And do you expect the president to bring this topic up in his speech tomorrow night?
Look, I will say this, as we know, when it comes to State of the Union speech, foreign policy is always a topic in that speech. I'm not going to get ahead of the president and what he's going to speak to as it relates specifically to China. I just laid out at the top that it is going to be up to China. It's up to China to see how they want to see this relationship moving forward. And so
I don't know what that means.
Yep. Broad question about this.
What does that mean? If it's up to China, China can do whatever they want. I guess we're going to wait and see. Are they going to send more balloons? Are they going to declare war? What's going on? Who knows? But the White House was really trying to cover over their misdeeds by turning around and blaming Trump and prior administrations. We covered earlier the story that they said that there were several different incursions when Trump was president. Ratcliffe and others have denied that, but the White House needed somebody else to blame. So he did it too. He didn't handle this well either. But the question is, well, if there really were balloons floating all over the place back then, why are we just learning about them now? And what's your plan with future balloons?
Thank you, Karine. Thanks. Is this the first Chinese balloon that the U.S. identified flying over U.S. airspace under this administration?
So what I can say is that we have talked about the China's balloon program. We have generally on this, the Chinese surveillance balloons program has been around for some time. We even briefed Congress this past August. So I don't have any specific on any other balloon during this president's administration, but there has been a program that has been in effect. We have kept Congress abreast on that. But I don't have anything more to say or to share.
How is it possible that this administration discovered at least 3 previous balloons that flew over the U.S. under the previous administration, but Trump officials didn't know it was happening?
Yeah, how is that possible? It's a real great question. You guys came out and you said there's like balloons flying all over the place. They never heard about that. Did you find those extra balloons next to all of that extra leftover inflation and illegal immigration going on as well?
Yeah, so look, I think that, and we have talked about this before, about how when the PRC government surveillance balloons transited the continental U.S. briefly, at least 3 times, as you just mentioned, during the president's prior administration.
This is rough.
And once that we know of the beginning of this administration's, but never for this duration of time, as we know. This information was discovered prior to the administration left, but the intelligence community, as I said, is prepared to give briefings to key officials. But this is something. Post. But this is something that they were not aware of, as we've just laid out. But again, we are ready to brief key officials to let.
So how are they not aware of it, but you're aware of it? They were looking at different data? Like, did they have a different dashboard? Did they forget to check that inbox? Like, oh man, that email account, I forgot about that. Oh, there's a whole different command center over there? I never even opened that door. You're kidding me. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Well, gosh, well, that would have been useful for those last 4 years. We would have been able to see everything up there. Well, all right, we better hopefully nobody finds out we weren't in there. That'd be kind of embarrassing.
Them know what the intelligence community was able to figure out.
You can share about how you became aware of it. Like, did you go back and look at some?
So I'm not.
They got a memo from Jim Baker, ex-Twitter, ex-FBI. He sent him a memo. Michael Sussman wrote it too and said, hey, don't forget about those balloons. Remember those balloons? Remember those Trump balloons that Christopher Steele brought over with him? You remember those, don't you?
I'm going to get into intelligence community information from here. That's not something that we do from certainly from the briefing room. What I can say is that we learned of this, the 3 prior during the past administration, and so we are willing to share that information. But again, just not going to get into intelligence from here.
Of course not.
Question on this: since the administration was aware of the balloon program, did any U.S. officials have conversations with the Chinese about balloons over U.S. airspace during this administration?
Yeah, if you knew about prior balloons and you saw another balloon is incoming and you say there's another balloon coming in South America, Latin America, what are you guys doing? Like, do you have a balloon strategy in place?
We're not going to get into specifics of private diplomatic conversations we have with China. We're just not going to do that from here. We've been very clear that what China did was indeed a violation of international law. You've heard directly from Secretary Blinken making that very clear. And China knows that that we will vigorously defend our homeland and sovereignty. That is something that we've also made very clear. But we're just not going to.
But not that vigorously, though. Only kind of vigorously, like moderately vigorous. All right. It's going to be sort of like, I don't know, maybe not even really that vigorous at all. Just sort of like average. Okay. It's just kind of just going through the motions of self-defense. Vigorous would be, all right, you're about a mile away from our airspace. Just understanding if you cross 1 inch across our perimeter, China, it's not going to work out well for you. And at that moment, right, at that moment before they actually cross, that's when you call the Chinese ambassador in or whomever they were meeting with at the White House. That's when you get on the phone. That's when Blinken says, you better turn that balloon around, buddy boy, or else this trip is off, okay? And there's going to be serious repercussions. But they didn't do that. So all of this vigorous talk, it's not very vigorous at all. It was vigorous after about 7 days or so, but not preceding that moment. So not a whole lot there from Karine. We also heard about the Trump people being briefed on this. Question came in from the media on this. All right, well, you said that the Trump people knew about other balloons or had other balloons or some other situation. Can you tell us what you're going to do with them?
Topic in the wake of the balloon operation, NSC, the administration has said that it's going to brief members of the Trump administration on that. Can you give us a list of which Trump administration members would be eligible for that briefing? I mean, is former President Trump eligible, since the president had previously blocked him from getting classified briefings after he left office?
So as we mentioned, and you heard my colleagues from the from NSC, that we are prepared. The Intelligence Committee is indeed prepared to offer key officials, as you were just laying out, from the Trump administration on the briefings on this PRC surveillance program. And so we're not going to get into who are those key officials from here. I would refer you to the Intelligence
Ratcliffe, Pompeo,
on those
Esper, who
what is
else?
going to happen, and
Trump, all of them denied
who
it.
those key officials would be. But again, we are prepared. We are willing to have that conversations, to do the briefing, but just not going to get into the specifics of who.
Third topic.
So we'll see if they get briefed, if there's this new revelation that maybe the military complex did know about this, but they didn't communicate it to Trump's head people, right? That would be a scandal in of its own making. But the final question came in to Karine from this gentleman in the media. We are through this current balloon catastrophe, all right? I know it was a very traumatic experience for many of us, but all right, we're through it. Great. Chinese balloon is down. They handled it like incompetent idiots, but it's done, right? It's over now. It's finally the end of the deal. But what happens if it reoccurs? What happens if China just says, well, all right, that was pretty successful. We got everything we needed before they took it out. I don't know, send another one. Should we send another one? They seemed angry. Not that angry. Did we get everything we needed? Yeah. All right, send another one. If that happens, Karine, what are you going to do about this?
Behind you.
Thank you. So, Karine, we know of these few balloons that had flown in the past, the one, of course, from last week. You say the relationship is up to China going forward. Should the expectation be for the American public that this is it with balloons then? Or is it that this could potentially happen again in the future? And if that's the case, that the standard procedure going forward is wait for it to get over water and then it'll be shot down?
I'm not going to get into any specifics of what might happen next or hypotheticals from here. I'm just not going to do that. What I can say is, as you've heard me say, there was a China surveillance program, right, balloon program that we have that has been going on for some time, that Congress certainly was briefed on back in last August, but just not going to get into hypotheticals from here.
And then one more. There's bipartisan calls up on Capitol Hill as it relates to TikTok and the national security implications of it. You have Congressman Ken Buck saying, if you see this CCP surveillance balloon scares you, wait until you hear about TikTok. Senator Michael Bennet had recently called on the CEOs of Apple and Google to remove TikTok from their devices, from their Google Play stores and Apple Play Store. Does the administration believe that TikTok is a national security threat, and does it believe that those apps should be removed from phones?
No, they're sending national security briefings on them.
So look, the president, the Biden administration, more broadly, has never allowed TikTok on the White House devices. Other federal agencies have similar restriction. We have been clear about our concerns on apps like TikTok. And so, look, we are focused on the challenges of certain countries, including China, seeking to leverage digital technologies and Americans' data in ways that present unacceptable national security risk. I'm just not going to get ahead of it. As we know, there's a review currently happening, but we take this very seriously. And as I said, the Biden administration has never allowed TikTok on the White House devices.
Is it a national security risk?
Again, I'm just not going to. There's a review happening by CFIUS. I'm just not going to get ahead of that.
Thanks, Karine.
All right, so the
Thank you.
spy balloon is flying overhead. The spy app is still embedded in 100 million Americans' cell phones, gobbling up the data. But Congress is turning their attention to it. Karine doesn't have many answers for us, but they are still responding to this, and we'll see if the Chinese respond or how the White House modifies their posture in the coming days, will, of course, continue to follow. We also have Congress. They are unhappy about this. Republicans in the Senate, very unhappy about the Biden's failures with the Chinese balloon. Queued up, we've got Rand Paul. He says the Chinese response has been appalling, in addition to the Biden administration's performance. We've got Ted Cruz said they waited too long, but we're starting with Tom Cotton, who just put it nice and simply. He said that this is nothing but a failure of the Biden administration.
What began as a spy balloon has become a trial balloon, testing President Biden's strength and resolve. And unfortunately, the president failed that test. And that's dangerous for the American people. The president was paralyzed for an entire week by a balloon. We should have shot this balloon down over the Aleutian Islands. We should never have allowed it to transit the entire continental United States. And I think there's a lot of open questions that the administration needs to answer to Congress on behalf of the American people about why they didn't.
Well, they were dragging their feet. They had to bring in that individual from China and bring him into the White House on Wednesday and sit down with him and talk to him and said, you have a spy balloon in our country, sir. Would you like to explain yourself? And he said, I have no idea what you're talking about. You're kidding me. You sure it's not a weather balloon? I think it is. I think it's a weather balloon. Let me check. Hang on a second. Hey, President. Yeah, he said it's a weather balloon. Yeah, don't worry about it. It's just gathering information on the cumulonimbus clouds. You're going to love the data that we get from it. Just trust us. And the Biden people were like, well, okay, I guess we'll just let it float out over the ocean for a few days. Tom Cotton's not buying it.
I think part of it is the president's reluctance to take any action that would be viewed as provocative or confrontational towards the Chinese communists.
They had a
I would
meeting
say
coming
what's
up.
provocative and confrontational is sending a spy balloon all across America.
Totally.
But second, I do.
They had a meeting with Blinken and Xi, and they did not want that to go off the rails. It was going to be the big event of Biden's foreign policy to sort of rekindle relationships there and push this all past the COVID era and, reunify the countries. And it got derailed because the Chinese aren't playing in good faith, obviously. And they've already embarrassed the Biden administration many times before. In fact, the last time that Blinken met with them, he scolded them. Blinken read some stupid statement that somebody at Berkeley wrote, and he said, hey, we in the United States condemn your treatment of the Uyghurs. And the Chinese said, what did you say, you little punk? First of all, look at your streets. It was 2020, I think, or right after the elections. Look at your streets. It was BLM all over the place, right? He said, your streets are burning to the ground, racist, bigot, idiot, white man. Don't tell me what to do in my country. And Blinken was like, whoa, he's never been talked to like that before. And so what do they think? They think that sending a balloon across is just like another, like they're probably laughing about it, honestly. I bet they got balloons all over President Xi's mansion right now. They got red balloons all over the place right now. He's just laughing it up.
I do believe the administration wanted to salvage the Secretary of State's trip on Friday night, and they got through Thursday afternoon. Thankfully, civilians in Montana and the Billings Gazette identified this balloon and blew the whistle on it, and finally the administration fessed up to the American people. It took another 12 hours for the Secretary of State canceled what was already an ill-advised trip. So I think there's a lot of answers for the administration to provide the American people.
Yeah, we need to know a lot more about this. What a joke. All right, so Ted Cruz is here. He says the same thing. They basically waited way too long. It should have just been an obvious thing. This is America, baby. We shoot first. Here is Ted Cruz.
Listen, I want to start by doing something that I don't do very often, which is commending Joe Biden for actually having the guts to shoot this down. That was the right thing to do. That is finally absolutely what the president should have done. Unfortunately, he didn't do that until a week after it entered U.S. airspace. He allowed a full week for the Chinese to conduct spying operations over the United States, over sensitive military installations, exposing not just photographs, but the potential of intercepted communications. And more broadly, I think this entire episode telegraphed weakness to Xi and the Chinese government.
Totally.
And to illustrate why, I would just ask one hypothetical question. Imagine how this would have played out if nobody had taken any pictures of the balloon. If nobody in Montana had looked up and noticed this giant balloon.
They wouldn't have told us.
If it wasn't in the news. We know that when the Biden administration knew about the balloon, they said nothing, they did nothing, they didn't shoot it down. And at the end of the day, I think the only reason they shot it down is because it made it into the news, and they felt forced to as a matter of politics rather than national security. That's
Everybody
a bad
was beating them up over this thing
Chinese
for a
government to
long
hear.
time. The pressure was too much to bear. So they had no choice but to shoot it down. And at that point, right, it was already, this whole thing was already through middle America, right? By the time that enough people kind of got eyeballs on this thing and there were demands and calls to shoot it down. In South Carolina and Tennessee and other places, there were news people communicating to sheriffs, tell them not to shoot at the balloon, right? People wanted this thing gone. But the Biden administration didn't want to derail their long planned trip to China. And so they just let it float overhead. And if they could have gotten away with it, they wouldn't have told us about this at all. It wasn't until people started finally getting pictures of this thing that there was action. So our last clip from Congress is Rand Paul. He's very upset about this. And Rand Paul is on Fox News on Sunday, and he's explaining what he thinks about this whole balloon situation.
You know, I think it's appalling. If they want to let us know that it's an accident, don't you think they would want to apologize?
Yeah.
The fact that they've already got their...
Sorry, we wasted millions and millions of dollars, not to mention a $400,000, $600,000 Sidewinder missile to take out your trash floating above our skies, gobbling up our information. If this was a mistake or an accident, how about an apology? Send us a, box of chocolate and some flowers and let's see how it goes.
Back up and they're resisting and talking about retaliation doesn't sound like much of an apology. If there is an innocent explanation for this, and it doesn't seem that there is at this point, but if there were, they should be apologizing. But either way, the Biden administration should have the Chinese ambassador come in to speak to the Secretary of State, and there should be a full examination of the question. With regard to what they should have done, we need a commander-in-chief that's able to respond and a national defense that is able to respond within seconds to minutes to penetration of our airspace. So this sort of long...
Not a week, not enough time for the Chinese to, meander into the White House for a sit-down meeting. Pick up the phone. It's not authorized. It's got to come down.
On out that we let this drift over the ocean to Alaska, across Canada, and then when they finally decided to do something, it still took them 4 more days.
Crazy.
This really is probing our defenses in a way. Even if there was no surveillance on board, they've gotten a great deal of information as to how sluggish the Biden administration is in their response. So if you decide to shoot it down a week later, you probably could have made that decision a lot quicker when it was over a deserted part of either Alaska or before it crossed the coast of Alaska. So this looks very, very weak in the eyes of our enemy, and I think was a huge mistake. But at this point, moving forward, what they need to do is they need to demand a full apology and explanation. If it was supposedly civilian, they should feed us all the data they took in and show us what they
let's see those cumulonimbus
was
clouds
absorbing. And if they're not going to show us that, we tend not to trust that they're telling us the truth.
Yeah, let's see what those weather patterns that they were studying look like, right? If it's really useful data, I'm sure they'll share it.
It's perplexing. Over 6 million people died, and some people say as many as 15 million people died, and we haven't had...
This is a question about COVID and about the ongoing relationships between the United States and China and about the investigations into all of this stuff, where it's all commingled, it's all intertwined.
One hearing. If you tell Democrats that baby's plastic in the baby bottle is causing cancer, they've probably had 25 hearings on this. But 15 million people die worldwide, at least 1 million Americans died, and not one hearing. Some of it is conflict of interest. We have many scientists in our country and around the world who are funded by our government, but they're also funded by the Chinese government directly. Some of this is not fully known because they're not disclosing this. When I asked Dr. Fauci in committee about this, he said it was none of my business.
China's paying everybody, including people like Hunter Biden.
And that a law protected these people. We know that 1,800 scientists in the NIH received $193 million. Woo-woo. This is not chump change. This is a good deal of money. We need to know which companies are paying them, and they should not be on any committees approving. So if they work for Pfizer or Moderna and they get a couple $100,000 a year in royalties, they can't honestly sit on a committee approving these vaccines. So there's a lot that needs to be known, and I'm still trying very hard to get Democrats to come on board. Once we can get one Democrat to sign a document request, the NIH, I think, will start to honor their commitment to the American people and release this information.
We'll be looking forward to that information when it comes out.
There's an in-between solution where we don't, have an embargo and no trade with China. I'm not for that. But at the same time, I'm not for sending them any money. We still send research money over there. And what the House Intelligence Committee released in an unclassified report about a month ago was that our money is going to U.S. universities, and then it's going to military research in China. Not even civilian research, but actual military research. The Academy of Military Medical Sciences in China gets money from U.S. universities. In fact,
U.S. money from the taxpayer goes to U.S. universities or to the government, then to the universities, then to China, to the Chinese military. And after everything we've been through over these several years, after all of the burying of information and the silencing of critics and the suppression of the truth, we're still funding all of this. This is still going on. They're spying on 100 million Americans through TikTok. They're flying balloons overhead. And a sitting senator, okay, somebody who is on the Homeland Security Committee and who is a ranking member on that committee, who has access to all sorts of intelligence data, is telling us this stuff right here openly. We're still funding the Chinese military. The United States government is funding the Chinese military through this convoluted chain of custody of money.
Fauci would say nothing to see here because there's an intermediary, and he says, oh, because we subcontracted, it doesn't count. No, it doesn't count. We should not have taxpayer money funding military research in China. And that it's extraordinary that this still goes on.
It quite is extraordinary.
Biggest damage isn't so much, and I haven't seen the intelligence of what we think that.
The question to Rand is, how much damage has this balloon caused between the United States and China, or to our national security interests?
I think the biggest damage isn't so much, and I haven't seen the intelligence of what we think they've gathered, which is probably damaging. But I think more damaging than even any surveillance is assessing our response time. And like I say, there are, since we've entered into the nuclear age, there are responses that have to occur within seconds to minutes. And the fact that this administration would dither for days over a balloon, I think
multiple meetings,
gives
phone
pause
calls
to us about how well we're protected and whether or not they have the ability to make decisions that would have to be made in seconds or minutes. So I think by probing our defenses this way and showing a level of ineptitude that is, I guess, surprising, it isn't good, you know, as far as telegraphing this to the rest of the world. And the thing is, if you're going to shoot it down finally when it reaches the Atlantic Ocean, why didn't they shoot it down when it crossed the coast into Alaska, in a remote part of Alaska, or even before it got into Alaska? They had to have seen this coming. And if they didn't see it coming, that's even worse. So, you know, we will have hearings on this. And as, you know, we're already in talks with the Democrats. We should have bipartisan hearings on this. And I think ultimately we will. But, you know, if we can't detect a balloon, we're in a world of hurt as far as defending this country.
Real quick, Senator, you have been raising your hand
on the debt ceiling. But anyways, that's Rand Paul. Absolutely appalling. Says the Chinese, they know what this was. If they were really gathering useful information, certainly they'll pass it on to us. We'll teach our grade school kids about the cirrus clouds up there at the top of the skies and so on. But that's not what it was at all. It was a spy operation. They know it. They should be apologizing, and they're not. So he's going to evidently hold hearings. We'll see what the House does as well. There's going to be a lot more to come. But we also have to ask ourselves whether Biden's going to address this at all. Anyways, tomorrow, the president is scheduled to deliver the State of the Union, February 7th on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So that will be after this show is over. And I do not intend to live stream it because it's going to be just brutal. Where can I watch it? I'm sure others will be live streaming it, but that is coming out tomorrow. They are already fencing up the Capitol building. You can see what it looks like here to make sure that it is nice and safe for our cherished and loved leader to give his presidential address at the Capitol. But there will be more on this. I'm sure Congress will start to investigate thoroughly, and when they do, we will continue to cover. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for subscribing and following along, and for liking this video wherever it is you're watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, we covered some good ground today. We talked about some updates in Congress. Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, Rand Paul. We heard from Karine Jean-Pierre, guided us through the timeline of the U.S. China balloon scandal. We'll see if anything else comes of that. Ned Price from the State Department got asked questions about the problematic relationship between the United States and China says they are reserving the right for a further response. We'll see if they have one. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this and more. Of course, I appreciate all those great super chats that came in from our friends on YouTube. We're getting those queued up. Thank you to our Rumble friends. Thank you to our locals friends, which is where we're going to go for our after party here in a minute. But first, let's hit some of these super chats that came in from our very generous YouTube friends. Here is the first one in the house from Aaron. Aaron is here. What's up, Aaron? Some people might call him Aaron, but that's not his name. His name is Aaron. Aaron says, I thought TikTok was banned from federal employees. I don't know about that. Maybe unless it's an intelligence agency, then they can use them because they have special privileges. Now, on that one with the Karine thing, I was thinking, is there another phrase? Like, did she just get confused with another phrase, or is that like a real phrase? Like, is that an intelligence phrase that we just haven't heard of? It's called a TikTok, like it's a memo. You know, it's just like a debrief. Maybe it's a timeline. It's a TikTok timeline, you know? Or they're actually sharing stuff on TikTok. I have no idea. Good to see you, Aaron. Fred Pedamonte is here. Says, Rob, my dog has been super quiet and acting real strange all day. Huh. Well, that's pretty interesting, Fred. Now, this is an interesting situation we have here in front of us. Now, if you remember, Fred's dog has been very, very involved in all sorts of interesting activities. Like Director Ray was over there on the phone. Previously, his dog bought an AR-15, if you remember. His dog also went to Epstein Island, and he also hung out with Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates. This was all, I know what was going on, Fred. I think I know what was going on. Yeah, your dog's behavior was strange over the past about week or so. And your dog today is all quiet and sad. I know exactly what was going on. He was being controlled by the balloon. Super quiet and acting really strange. That's because the balloon is down. He's going to return to normal. He was under balloon control, Fred. That's what it was doing. Yeah, and now it's coming back to normal. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of had a weird feeling also myself when the balloon was overhead. Like it was just weird kind of energy. In fact, that's kind of why I was feeling this red shirt today. I kind of felt like I needed to wear red, I woke up and I was thinking to myself, capitalism really isn't all that cracked up to be, Capitalism, it kind of has a lot of faults, when that balloon was flying over. I was like, capitalism is kind of a problem. You know what I mean, comrades? Don't you get it? Like, don't you understand that capitalism is really, it has a lot of downside to it. It just kind of hit me, Yeah, so comrades, I think it's important that we start thinking here on this channel about our community a little bit more. About, taking care of each other. Giving in to, protecting our motherland. What's good for us is good for the motherland, Yeah, that's kind of what I was feeling like. All right, just kidding. I'm going to have to go read some more Federalist Papers as soon as we get off here and clean all of that disgustingness out of my head. Got to think about John Locke again. John Locke. Life, liberty, and property. Life, liberty, and property. Get these commies out of here. All right. So that's what happened, Fred. I know it, man. I was going through the same experience. I felt communist possessed a little bit. Woo, scary. But the balloon's gone, and I'm feeling better now. I love capitalism again. Thanks for the super chats. Send in the super chats. Yeah, I love this capitalism, baby. Yeah. Woo. All right. Okay, we're good. We're back. Tina's here. Says if a new virus comes out, hopefully the balloon didn't drop anything. Says Tina. Tina's in the house. Thank you for the super chat, Tina. Didn't drop any Chinese nefariousness. Fred Padamonte says, can't shoot a balloon until you know its pronouns. That's true. I don't know. That's true. Balloons have feelings too. Balloons need love too. Well, Trump had balloons for his birthday flying over Mar-a-Lago. There you go. That's true. But probably should send the FBI in. Maybe they could take them a week or two to go down there. If it was Trump's balloon, they would have shot that thing out of the sky in about 2 seconds. But it wasn't Trump's balloon. It was China's balloon. So it got to float up there for a couple days. Not a problem at all. Marion Holtzman says TikTok is not to be used by the government. Boy, are we in trouble. Trump 2024, MAGA we must, says Marion Holtzman. That's good to see you, Marion. Yeah, I know it's not to be used by the U.S. government, but apparently they're still sending briefings on it. I have no idea what that was all about. But good to see you, Marion. Thanks for the super chat in here. Kevlar says, just another White House debacle cover-up, nothing to see. But did you hear about Trump? It's exactly right. It was such a stupid, transparent article from CNN. Here, right, this one. What a ridiculous headline. Chinese spy balloons under Trump not discovered until after Biden took office. Hilarious. Thank you for that one. Coming in from Kevlar. Another one from Marion. Thank you, Marion. 2 today. Says, in Tennessee, the China balloon floated over Oak Ridge, largest uranium storage facility in the United States. Wow. Wow. Largest uranium storage in the USA. Of course they would. Why wouldn't they? Thank you, Marion, for that tidbit. Pam Ronning says, KJP said earlier the White House doesn't allow TikTok, but then a department of something put out a message on TikTok. I know, I got that too. Pam, it doesn't make any sense. You go, what? That's why I was wondering, did she just forget to say something? Like, was that another word? You know, a trip, you know, something else that has a T-Taw. And she just said TikTok instead of the other thing. But I don't know what the other thing would have been. So it sounded to me like it was just like an actual TikTok that was transmitted across the app. Don't know. Ronnie Cole's in the house, says, I am surprised that Ladyboy Booty Juice did not shut down, did not shut down all the flights in the U.S. so the balloon would not be bothered. Yeah, so he could have a safe passage. Everybody calm down. The Chinese are here, okay? They need to go where they need to go. Get out of their way. Thank you, Ronnie Cole. Bruce Rice is a member. He's been a member for 4 months, and he says, thank you, Bruce. Thanks for being here for so long and for joining us as a member. YouTube members get the little extra. You get access to gifts. You get access to the badge, which is awesome. You get access to the member live streams as well, which is awesome. And so Bruce Rice has been here with us for 4 months now. Says, did that balloon weigh 1 ton? I don't know what the total official weight was, but if we're still playing on the overweight balloon pronouns have feelings analogy, then yes, it could have weighed 1 ton. I'm not sure about that, but it's a good question. Now, of course, we have our friends over on Rumble. I want to say hello to our Rumble friends. Thank you to everybody who watches over there. We're grateful for you watching on Rumble. We have in the house, Paul Blart, Annie Graham, Adicia 1999. We got Slow Hands in the house. Perambulator is over there. We got Zone Girl 2017, Jan X over there. Salty Zipper, something else at the end of that name that I won't read here. We also have Sedona Rocks, Annie Graham's there. Everybody's chatting away. Thank you, everybody, for watching us and following along over on Rumble, which is a growing platform. We're very excited about that. We also have our other free speech platform called Twitter that we like to check in on and see what's going on over there. Sometimes we have some people who even watch the stream over there, like today. Oh my gosh, out of control. We have a whopping 5 viewers. Absolute madness. And when we break double digits, Elon's going to throw us a party. He promised that was going to happen one day. All right, so let's take a look at some of the memes that have been shared on our Twitter thread. Before we jump over to our after party on locals, James is here, says Biden plans to build a fleet of Zeppelins to fight off the Chinese spy balloons. That's great. Hopefully he fills them with a better interior gas. This one from James Pepper is, this is a Far Side comic, it looks like, from Larson. Yeah, and this one is, this pilot got plane, Charlie Brown's dog, Snoopy, and the Chinese spy balloon. Amazing. That is from James Pepper. Another one, you idiot, you're howling at the Chinese spy balloon, not the moon. That's a good one. Also, this one has, has Pete and his husband swinging from the Chinese balloon. And our friend Paul Minot, who is at Sleepy Dog Lee on Twitter, and he is one of our meme smith extraordinaires, says, Rob, could you remind people that along with a healthy diet, and healthy lifestyle matters too, please encourage people to get some fresh air and sunshine every once in a while as spring approaches. No farm is needed. Absolutely a great message from our friend Paul Minot at Sleepy Dog Lee. He has a message from me when I was a farmer. You know, before I went to law school, I was a farmer, as you can see here, evidenced by this photographic evidence. When I was a farmer, I said something like this: when I ain't lawyering, I'm out standing in my field, replenishing my energy with Field of Greens from Brickhouse Nutrition. It's real food with no extracts. Your friend, Farmer Rob. Get your Brickhouse Nutrition. Get your Brickhouse Nutrition, my friends. Real food, no extracts. Field of Greens, real organic superfood. That's how it was when I was out there. Thank you, Paul, for that. It's true. And Paul is exactly right. Fresh air and sunshine. You know, I think these are incredibly important. Incredibly, incredibly important. Part of a balanced life. Fresh air, sunshine, Field of Greens, and meat. Eat your meat too, for those of you who are into that. All right, so another one came in from Paul Minot. From Trump. Says, we have to stop being the stupid people. It's true. It's true. That's good advice for all sorts of things. We have to stop being the stupid people. I try to tell myself that every morning. Every morning I wake up and look in the mirror, I say my affirmations. You know, today's going to be a great day, and I have to stop being the stupid person. Stop it, Rob. It's good advice. It's very good advice. Here's another one. We had a couple more come in. Let's see what else is in the house. CA Human is here. Says 4 months ago, there was another balloon from what we heard. Danny McWilliams is in the house. What's up, Danny? Donna is sharing this one, which is Winnie the Pooh looking down upon us, spying down from on high. Danny McWilliams, shout outs to Savvy Sue is over there. That says this is what it feels like when you log on to TikTok. I think that is accurate. Your brain goes right into the trash bin. Stofers is here. And yeah, this is about right. This is our last one from Parker. Parker says, well, Trump had balloons too. That's exactly right. What they thought, that's what their argument was. And then it transmorphed into this kind of theory that they're happy they spied on, that we got spied on, because they got all sorts of information, you know. Well, we learned about them too. We spied on them right back. So how about that? And over on Locals, which is where we're going, American Granny to You says, thank you, Robert. And everyone in the chats, you are all great. That's awesome. Thank you for that. And she says, she's recommending all of the chats with an S all across the fruited plain of the internet. That is Rumble chat, Locals chat, YouTube chat, Twitter chat, the whole chat. We're grateful for all of you. American Granny to You says you are all great. And I agree with her. I agree with you. You are all great. But that is it for us on the day. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our after party. And I hope you join us there. This is the web address. We're going to head on over there for a little bit of fun after the show. Come check it out. We've got more comments to attend to. And it's a great time. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We also want to thank our sponsors of the show, of course, Brickhouse Nutrition, where you can go to fieldofgreens.com and use code Robert. Don't forget that code so you save your 15% off. Get your real organic superfood and feel ultra vibrant and get healthy for when we have to face an incoming invasion. Also, thank you to our sponsors, of course, R&R Law Group, my law firm. At RR Law AZ, we help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. 480-787-0394. Online at rrlawaz.com. We also, K Bean is in the house. Ultra shout out to K Bean, who is modding down the fort for us today. VNT Prime, we also like to give a shout out to, except he abandons us on Mondays when he's playing games and being social and doing other things, which I guess is acceptable. But K Bean is here, and she also dropped in a super chat, which is very generous of you. Thank you, K Bean. And she is giving an ultra shout out to George Klaus, the Gavelsmith, that is true. He is the Gavelsmith. And George Klaus is responsible for that gavel, by the way. That gavel right there. And it's a beautiful gavel. If I wasn't plugged in, I'd stand up and get it. but it's a beautiful gavel, and we're ultra thankful to George Klaus. And that's from Greg Murat, too. This is our friend from Australia. Sent over, that's a rugby ball from Australia, our friend Greg. And so we're grateful for our friends out there who send in some good stuff over to us. Thank you to everybody for that. But K-Bean, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the memory of George Klaus. Ultra shout out to George out there, wherever you are, my friend. We appreciate you. We also want to thank our friend Just Cause, who mods down the fort for us. Grateful for him. We miss our friend Lean. Hopefully she's doing well wherever it is she is. Our friend Play and Hooky comes in and mods for us as well, along with Ronnie Cole, who sent in a super chat. I saw Zulu, who was in the house as well. Shout out to Zulu. And our friend Geomancy. Our meme smiths who meme down the fort, who meme smith our memes into the ether. Our friend Paul Mino, he's at Sleepy Dog Lee on Twitter, an excellent follow. And come check out Geegum Geegum, our friend over on Locals, if you want to connect with some other meme smiths. But that, my friends, is it for the day. We are going to leave it right there. We're going to come back tomorrow. It's going to be a busy week, and I hope you join us so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.